May I have a motion that the closed meeting be closed and that the board certifies to the best of each member's knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting to which this certification applies, and only such business matters as were just identified in the motion concerning the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Sturtevant, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Now, if you'll please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, I believe we have some recognitions.
Well, actually, tonight, we do have some that through the summer have been to summer camps and earned
Okay.
some recognitions, but the fact is that all of them are busy with summer jobs and other types of things, so we're going to postpone those for the evening and move ahead and hopefully be able to pull them back in August, although many of them are seniors and will be going on to university. But we do have the recognitions, and we'll see how we can put that in place for them.
Okay.
But moving on, I think our agenda tonight should be fairly succinct as we look at several of the things that we've been working on through the system for the last month, or even less than a month, because we've met so frequently through this year, the summer. The school fee schedule and the bell schedule are both items that the board members have had to look at, to consider for voting on this evening. And you'll have a chance to ask questions, or you can do it now or as we get ready to vote on them later, but you've had those. A new item tonight that I made you aware of is that the Board of Supervisors has passed the expectation of passing the $40 million bond referendum to begin in the fall. This is the second one, that with the $50 million is already in place. And then the $10 million that they have set aside would be the total of the $100 million that right now they're looking at for a budget for the new school. They want to put that on get that set up for this fall because they have found that the rates are lower than they are expected to be in the future. They did actually state in the meeting last Monday of the Board of Supervisors, Wayne stated that what they voted on last year, the increase in interest would have cost us over $3 million. I believe it's what he said at this point, if they hadn't done this. So they're anxious to try to get this one in as well. If you have questions about that, the reason that they want it to be voted on tonight, we'd like to put things off for a month, but we want to be able to get that in so we can work with them. And they want us to do that. We have to vote on it as well as the Board of Supervisors for it to pass and to go on the books.
I think we probably have some discussion on that
Yes.
one. If anyone has any. Is there one thing I want to know, is there a 5% requirement spending in the first however many days like there was on the first bond?
There will be some requirements in the first 6 months for some expenditures to be in place.
And
is my
how would
understanding,
we-
yes, as it was on the other. It's the same type of
Right.
bond referendum.
How would we do that?
I would
What's gonna
imagine we
happen
would come
then?
out of some of our architectural fees, and hopefully, as soon as possible, it may be the purchase of the land, because that's a piece that I know we're waiting on, and I know that the engineer's study that was hired by the Board of Supervisors with the money from our first bond, the engineer study on the highway piece has been sent to the Highway Department. That question was raised at the Board of Supervisors meeting last week as well, and Wayne indicated that from the Friday 2 weeks ago when that came in, the Highway Department said that they would have an answer for us, a study for us, and results within 60 days. And the sooner the better, because that really is holding us up on what the architects can do. The architects need for the purchase of the land to be in place so that they can get the appropriate engineering reports on the drilling and the stone and things in there that need to be in place, so.
They can't be doing that, they're not doing that currently?
I believe Wayne has indicated that until we purchase the land, we can't do as thorough a boring and study that would require for indication of what it would cost.
Why? Oh, I don't guess you know. We have to
I
ask
don't know.
Wayne.
That's just what my understanding
Right.
is.
I just assumed we were already doing that, or we had
No.
done that, because they had taken machinery into that property, and
They did a
There's been
preliminary,
some.
they did a preliminary test, but we don't know, we don't have any idea what we're getting into.
The idea of going in and actually looking at what would need to be moved with where things are, that does need to be done, and much more thoroughly than what we've got so far.
Did you say, Mr. Carter, said we cannot do a more thorough check of the rock until we purchase the land?
I don't want to misquote him. I can tell you that's what I understood.
You know,
That's what I've heard him say in previous
Well-
meetings.
you wouldn't buy a used car unless you drove it, would you? You know, it's the same principle. I just think we should know everything about this land before we start spending $2, $3, $4, $5 million. Just buying the land is we know what that price is. Well, we don't know that because we still got the VDOT report has to come back, and then we may have to buy more land and more things, and we may have to do the site plan could cost us a lot more. And then if you get on that hill and have to take out about $4 or $5 million dollars worth of stone, it's going to be embarrassing. So, I mean, I'm not driving the train.
Those
Yeah.
were questions that initially, as we had the joint education committees, were mentioned as a reason that the site could not be purchased until some of these questions were
Right.
answered. Why we can't go in now and do more actual engineering study on where the rock is, I have understood him to say it couldn't be done until it was purchased, but could be a miscommunication on my part and an
Right.
understanding.
Yeah.
And if you
But
go
it
back,
hadn't been done, and I would have thought that it needs to be done.
and if you go back and talk to some of the old timers, just common sense ways of looking at things. Talbot Marks Construction Company built Highway 58 up there years ago. Key Construction came in and four-laned that through there. And if you ask any of those old guys who were on that board, they'll tell you what that hill almost broke them. I just rather be safe. I just like to see it. If it costs us $15,000 or $20,000 to go up there and bore some holes and say, hey, there's rock on top of the ground, it seems like the owner of the property wouldn't mind that since we've already got an option on it. But, I mean, that's just a question I've got.
Yeah. But the land acquisition is the Board of Supervisors' domain, right? They're charged with buying the land, so.
Doesn't the price of the land come out of the overall budget for the school construction?
Right.
That's what they say. That's true. That's what they say. But I would hope they would use due diligence. I mean, we can want things to be a certain way, but it's up to the Board of Supervisors to do what they think they need to do before they purchase the land.
Yeah, it just, when they attach trustee to my position, it bothers me to spend money and not know the things that are happening.
Well, as a board, I think we can ask through the supervisors that they have that test done, so both boards know prior to the purchase as to what the extent of the rocks are.
Right.
They should be able to do that, but I think we'll have to ask.
Well, I'm totally in favor of going ahead with having something done. However, I look at it from the standpoint that I don't think we can, or they can do a whole lot with someone else's land until such time that it is earmarked as.
We already paid for that option.
so it's my understanding that haven't we already paid a deposit on the land?
Yeah, that's what the option is.
That was just an option.
Sir?
That was just an option.
Okay. Well, if my memory serves me correctly, before we brought Blue Justice Upton on board, the firm that did the previous report was the one that showed us the bulk of the rock on that property sitting where it was, because they told us they were able to reconfigure the school where the parking lot was towards the rock and the school was away from the rock. It's kind of what we saw the initial report. And see, the Board of Supervisors hired them. The school board had nothing to do with that. And I thought that they were the ones, and maybe I'm wrong, that went in there and did some boring and testing on that land.
They did. And
But they
said-
just, what you're saying is they didn't do,
They said there's rock,
okay.
but they're not gonna say there's a lot of rock until we spend a lot of money. You see how it works, you know, they don't wanna give us the whole story until we pay for it.
Right.
So, I mean, I just think the study should be done so that we don't make a mistake. It would just be an embarrassment to go up there and have to spend $4 or $5 million extra dollars, or have to raise that school up on the hill and build it on field dirt.
I think a point that needs to be considered, though, as we have this discussion, is that we have worked with Mr. Baloo Justice and them, with Mr. Upton, and with the idea that we would like to be able to go into the new school. The schedule is to go in.
21.
Right. And the longer this is postponed, the more it's going to put off that schedule, and it's going to cost more money, we think, because of increasing cost of everything else. We want to be able to keep this on schedule as much as possible. And in my conversations with Mr. Upton, he's moving ahead without some of this information, but that's a piece he has to have to be able to know exactly where the school needs to be.
Right.
And we have to have the information from the highway department in order to know where the entrances need to be and how long the bus lanes that are going to have to be added need to be. So those are two items that have the potential to shut down our current schedule if we don't do.
And this is just to lock in this financing.
This is to lock in.
Right, they have it
this
twice a
part of
year, if I
financing.
remember, isn't it July
That's
and
right.
October or
That's
something?
exactly right.
So if we didn't spend anything out of it, then we would have to reapply for it in October.
Exactly.
So we're not, the money's just going to be available. It doesn't mean that we
They're
necessarily
looking to
have
try
to
to
spend it.
save
For-
the money that is
Right.
anticipated. The
If we can't
interest
spend
is
it,
gonna
then
go.
we won't.
Right.
If there's nothing going.
You know, we know we're gonna spend it, it's gonna cost at least that much, and they're looking
Right.
at how they put it together.
And we don't have any choice but to vote for it because their rates are going up. We already know that, so it's gonna
Right.
cost us if we don't.
Right.
And you said that Mr. Upton he needs that information on the rock study before he can determine,
He's very anxious to get that information, yes.
is that something that has to be done again? And
Well,
can
it
we
needs
ask?
to be done in more detail. He needs to know the thickness of the rock, the quality of the stone. The stones are graded in different levels of quality. And, you know, granite, we think is granite, but some granite is not quite as hard as other granite, and so that's the kind of thing that they need to know as well.
So shouldn't we ask for that then to be done
Yes.
as a board?
I mean, again, I think.
I would think isn't Wayne going to do that, though? I mean,
Not till
he's not
after-
waiting around to hear from us, is he?
Not go after he buys the land.
Really? He doesn't care?
Well, I mean, we can go back and ask him. Because it's taken
Yeah.
as much time, I think it's appropriate.
Right.
With
I
the
think we could
board's
ask him, but,
consensus,
yeah.
to go back and ask him, and I'll be happy to take that message back. We
All right.
would like to know so that we can try to stay on schedule as much as possible.
I mean, again, this time, the 60-day waiting period, again, for VDOT is putting us behind again. And I mean, again, anywhere we go, I'm sure Mr. Edwards will agree, anywhere we go on 58, we're going to run into rock somewhere because of that vein. I mean, anybody that's driven up down 85, especially going south to Henderson, I mean, the way they're riding those roads, I mean, they're blowing rock and beating up rock everywhere, up and down 85.
There's a geological survey that's been done on that hill all the way from the quarry. And the reason they built the dam where it is because of the granite base that's in it. If you look at this study, it goes across 58 and up Baskerville Road. I built houses on Baskerville Road you can't build a basement in. And when you're drilling if you're going to drill a well at 15 and 20 feet, you're in solid granite and you don't come out of it. It's just some of those things that happens, but there's a geological study that shows that vein, and it actually crosses 58. It goes all the way to Amelia,
Goes where?
all the way to Amelia.
Well, then can we ask that, Paul?
I think we
I
could
think
ask.
every-
It
yeah.
doesn't hurt anything to ask.
Yeah, definitely ask the status of that.
Okay. I'll be happy to.
All right.
Item D on the, if you're ready for us to go ahead. Item D on my report is simply that the two persons that had been designated as my designees in case I'm not here were Dr. Majette and Dr. Matney, both of whom have left us, and so there's a recommendation that the person that's identified as our new assistant superintendent and then Mrs. Alga would be the first and second designees in my spot. That would need to be voted on because it's policy. We have to have those identified should something happen to me. And then tonight, there is actually no policy update from VSBA, but Ms. Alga is available if there are questions on what you were given last month, which needs to be voted on tonight. So I won't ask her to come up unless we have questions. Okay. And item F, Mr. Dalton has a special request about music instrument surplus.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Nichols, board members. La Crosse Elementary School would like to have 74 violins and 23 keyboards declared surplus. These are items left over from the music program that is not in existence anymore at that school. I'd like to recommend that the board deems these items surplus, and that is also an action item tonight.
Mr. Jones, I remember when we did the high school not too long ago, there was a company that, instead of putting them in up for auction or whatever, we sold them to somebody, a company that bought old instruments, didn't we?
Yes, sir, that's
Is that-
correct.
is
We've
that what
already
this-
been in touch with Chris Medilla, and we've reached out to that company, and plus there are other options that we may have to do with them.
Okay.
We may be able to donate them to another school division,
Right.
if that's what the board sees fit to do. But first of all, we have to get them declared surplus before we can do anything with them. So that's what we're seeking tonight, to get those items declared surplus, and then explore all avenues what to do with them.
Okay.
And I might add that I've had some conversation with Mr. Mayhew. I anticipate in August, we'll be probably bringing some old buses for surplus as well. So we may be looking at an auction coming up in the fall.
Okay.
But he'll have a report on that at the August meeting.
Thank you.
Item G on our agenda is it's time to do some adoptions of new textbooks for our middle school math. Those items are, the recommendations are actually here that you could have had a chance to preview. We do need to vote on this tonight because there is a finality to getting them in before the students come this fall. We have new math SOLs that are have been adopted by the state, and these textbooks are much more closely aligned to what we need for the new SOLs. So that is in the report and on the agenda for voting, for action and voting tonight. Also, there's a need for the VSBA delegate and alternate selection tonight. And I think we'll just have to ask you to, when we get to the point of doing that, identify who those persons are, who you would prefer to have those. But if there's any discussion, this is the time that you can talk about whom you would like to be our delegate and alternate.
Mr. Nichols, typically the delegate is the chairman.
Right.
And the alternate is the vice chair. And since I'm the vice chair, I also serve on a proxy committee for that assembly meeting. So if Mr. Ritchie's not going to be able to be there, then we need to, since I'm the vice chair, last year Gavin filled in for me on that committee spot. So we just need to kind of look ahead and,
Be
if Mr.
prepared.
Ritchie's going to be there, that's fine. It's not going to be a conflict. But if he's not going to be there, then we need to designate an alternate, other than me.
Any other conversation? Well, we're flowing on through tonight. As far as specific items that I would just want to bring to your attention, And very much in keeping as a segue from that discussion, we did have the VSBA summer meeting today. It was very informative. We had 4 representatives that were able to go. Ms. Garner, Ms. Bailey, Mr. Palmer, and Mr. Honeycutt joined me for those meetings. I serve as the co-chair of the Workforce Development Committee for VSBA, and we had our first identification of school divisions that were able to be awarded and identified with some of their programs in workforce development, and that was very well received. And then I think among the various sessions that were held, there was some very good information. I don't know if any of those who went have some comments about the meeting today that they'd like to share, but this would be a good time.
It's always a good meeting, and we have an opportunity to visit with about 25 other school divisions, and they share with, we all share together what we're doing that's working, and we get ideas from one another. And anything from school discipline to professional development ideas. Today we heard about a peer-to-peer tutoring group on the secondary level. It's actually it's a class that the students get credit for. They volunteer to do that, and that was very interesting idea to help peer-to-peer help with math and English and language and all kinds of things there. So it's always a good meeting. I'm always glad that we take part. We don't always implement everything we hear, but it is good to share and hear it from other school divisions on what's working there.
I concur. It was a very informative meeting. We had a chance to meet with 2 attorneys, school attorneys, and they brought us up on a lot of things that had we not been introduced to, or in the past, some of it we have already been introduced to, you can stumble and you can find yourself into a bind. So it's always good to hear what they have to say about dealing with certain situations.
I feel like the meeting was very informative as well. We did go over the spring forum that we hosted in Chase City, the Southern Regional meeting that we had. We had all schools participate except for one county, and they had an emergency call board meeting that night, and they would not be able to be in attendance that night. Our next meeting is slated for April of next year. We're going to host it in Bedford County. One positive of all the spring forums that we had in the state, our Secretary of Education chose to attend the one here in Mecklenburg because of our progress that we're making in the new portrait of a graduate and the things that we're doing here, and was very impressed with what Mr. Nichols and the leadership of our staff and administrators are doing here in Mecklenburg County. So you all to be commended for the job you do.
Thank you. And then I would also like to point out that we have been working with Old Dominion University. I think everybody's aware that we have a significant teacher shortage across the state. We're very thankful on our personnel agenda tonight, we are filling quite a few of the slots that we've had open. So we're making progress. We're very happy about that, both at all staff levels. But in looking into the future, I've been working very hard with the superintendents from Halifax County and Charlotte County and Pittsylvania and Danville, and with the Southern Virginia Higher Education Center to look at a partnership with Old Dominion University that would immediately make options for career switchers with bachelor's degrees to be able to come in and get certified as teachers very quickly as a first phase. A second phase of this partnership with Old Dominion University at the Higher Ed Center would be an opportunity for persons who have associate degrees or who are aides who want to get the bachelor's degrees in, as I understand it, any area, and then get certified as teachers to be able to sort of be on the fast track to get that taken care of. And we've had quite a few of our aides that have been very interested in doing that. And we're very pleased for those persons to come in. They certainly get good experience as they work with us for aides. So that's the second phase of it. And then the third phase is continuing to work on our Teach for Tomorrow program, identifying students in our currently in school with us that may be looking and seeing how we can help them go ahead through the process and get certified through the community college and then with universities to get and have them working with us to be trained. So that piece of it is very important. Of course, we can't hardly believe it, but as we are now in the middle of July, our new teacher orientation for all of our new teachers starts August the 1st. That's 2 weeks away. And our students will be returning on August the 13th. So there's still some work to be done to try to be prepared for them. But the summer's gone by very quickly, and there's been a lot of work that has been done on the part of all of our administrators and maintenance staff, and so many that we're so thankful for in trying to get ready for that. So we're excited, and I would also mention that the school board is not outside of that hard work through the summer, because we have met many times, including our last meeting as we had the training for the Office of Civil Rights, Title IX. That is a very hot topic right now across the state. I've even had calls, since they know that we've had it, from other superintendents asking questions about where that's going. And I appreciate you all participating with us in that. That will be a part of the training for all staff. The administrators have had it, now the school board has had it, and we will be taking and extending that to all staff persons into the new year. So it's important, and we appreciate your time and your efforts and your working with us on that. And Mr. Chairman and board members, that's my comments for the night. We can go on to your comments.
All right. In addition to, you were going to ask about ask the Board of Supervisors about the studying the land further. I would like them to schedule another meeting for the Joint Education Committee, maybe related to that, because that's where we get involved and that's where we find out what's going on. We have members on the Joint Education Committee. You know, we haven't been involved. When was the last time they met? You know.
It's 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah, so we've been kind of out of this process completely, because like I said, we can wring our hands and worry about this all we want, but the purchase of the land is up to the Board of Supervisors. They're going to do that, and they've been moving along without us, and we don't really know what's going on because they're not including the Joint Education Committee. So, and I don't mind calling, or whoever needs to call, but I think they need to meet, if for no other reason, to keep us informed, so we can keep other people informed about where this process is and what's going on.
The board has asked, the Board of Supervisors has asked for a meeting with the architects on Tuesday, the 24th of July. That's Tuesday week. And it's a 7 o'clock meeting, and so they're focused on it. So I think it's appropriate for us to come back and ask for this as well.
Okay, so maybe sometime after that, shortly after that, the Joint Education Committee could meet. Did you want me to, are you going to?
I'll do it.
Ask about that, okay. And also, did you want to say anything about the local sales tax support?
Oh, yes, but we're going to do that with the finance report.
Okay. Then I don't have any more remarks. We're up to our committee reports. First, the Joint Education Capital Improvement Committee.
No report
No
tonight.
report. How about the Finance Committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee met this afternoon at 5 o'clock. We reviewed the bills. We will have a recommendation on those bills. And Mr. Nichols, if you would get us up to speed on what Delegate Edmonds is proposing.
Yes, Delegate James Edmonds, right next to ours over to the west, has actually worked very closely with the lawyers and those looking at a request or a bill to go into the General Assembly in this coming session that would ask the General Assembly to allow counties to increase sales tax, to give the counties the ability to increase sales tax specifically for school capital improvement programs. Currently, counties do not have this option. And in fact, as studies have been done by Delegate Edmonds, We have learned that a penny sales tax increase in an area would probably generate more revenue than a penny increase on real estate taxes. So, and it would be a tax that would impact anybody coming through the area, not just local residents. The Board of Supervisors in Halifax County and in Mecklenburg County have both passed resolutions supporting this request of the General Assembly. The General Assembly will have to pass it, and as I understand the language of the bill, it would say that if the General Assembly passes it, then the localities would have the option to put together a referendum to be voted on for this that would be local. And so I think it's something that certainly throughout the rural areas of the state, it would be most welcome, because right now the localities are extremely limited on what they can do to generate revenues for supporting the school systems. And, you know, we've been waiting 60 years for our schools to be built. Other areas have been, in some cases, waiting longer. And in most cases, they've been doing it more frequently. I think that's one of the reasons it's come out of Halifax, is that we know Halifax is also looking at building a new high school, and they need to be able to generate some revenue. So it would, of course, it's something that we'll learn more about as they put it together. It's my understanding that Delegate Edmonds is looking for a senator in the state that would co-author the legislation to put it in at the Senate side as well. But hopefully we'll see some progress on that. It's been discussed among the rural school program that we are a part of, that was received very positively by the Rural School Association. So I think we're going to get some support for it. We'll just have to see if it'll pass the General Assembly.
So we talked about this in the Finance Committee, and the members of the Finance Committee that were present wondered if it might not be something that our board should endorse and pass on, since our Board of Supervisors have already done that, just to show support of the idea. So if it would be the will of the board that we might adopt some resolution similar to what the supervisors have already adopted.
It's something that you can think about, and we can bring it back at the August meeting.
Sounds
It's
like a good
time,
idea.
because the General Assembly doesn't meet again until January.
And Mr. Chairman, that's all we have from Finance this evening.
All right. Was there any more discussion on that sales tax issue? I know I read about it in the paper, so some of the information's out there already. School Safety Committee.
No report.
No report? Gifted and Talented Special Ed Health and Family Committee meeting. Report. There's no report from that committee. How about the CT Career and Technical Education Committee? There's no report there either. The Athletics Committee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The student athletes we have are currently participating in some of the recreational programs. I believe some of our girls and boys have games tonight. The Clarksville team, I believe, is playing softball. Most of the programs are football, volleyball tryouts are going on soon. And I believe, Mr. Nichols, you have anything else on? A lot of people have been asking about fishing. Do you have an update on the fishing piece?
Well, we actually have had a meeting over the 4th of July with some of the persons who in the local area that have been interested in supplying boats. We learned that, and of course we had talked about this earlier, the fishing programs are typically just local clubs as opposed to programs that are athletic events. And that's the way we've set ours up. So we're looking for Coach Magnum, who has been working with this, to continue to work with the identification of the boys. He indicated at that time in our conversation that he already has over 40 boys and girls.
Boys and
not
girls.
just boys
Yeah.
and girls that are interested, have expressed interest in being able to participate in this. And he will be looking for more who would be interested, and then they'll be looking for captains of fishing boats. There would be 2. They need to work in teams of 2, we learned, and then they will look to find the boats to support them. They're having a lot of tournaments on Bugs Island Lake and Gaston Lake, and everybody we've talked to has been excited that we are looking to, or have voted and are looking to have that club established in this area for them.
So is the program on track as far as starting this school year coming up?
As we understood it from the president of the bass program for youth was there and said typically as schools start in September, they get that whole piece up and running for that year. So we feel like, you know, he does need to go with the boys to help look for some of the boats. And we know of some persons who are members of the Bass Federation that have expressed interest in working with them. So it's a matter now of him working to connect the boys and the boats.
Okay, thank you.
So that's a possibility for this
Oh,
fall?
yes, we
Okay,
we
good.
expect it to be this fall,
All
yes.
right, great. All right, the instruction committee, we have,
We haven't met recently, so we will get back with you.
yeah, hopefully, we've got some new personnel on board, so hopefully we'll meet here pretty soon. All right, we are now to the public input part of the meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to speak?
And no, not tonight.
We don't. All right, down to our action items. With regards to the minutes from our special meeting, June 5th, 2018, do I have a motion that the school board approves the minutes of the special school board meeting held on June 5th, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt, seconded by Mr. Sturtevant. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Now, may I have a motion that the school board approves the minutes of the regular school board meeting held on June 18th, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Bailey, seconded by Mr. Palmer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Abstain.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Now, may I have a motion that the school board approves the minutes of the special school board meeting held on June 25th, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Abstain.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Now, may I have a motion that the school board approves the payment of the bills?
Mr. Ritchie, the Finance Committee does make that recommendation.
All right, since we've got the recommendation of the Finance Committee, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. May I have a motion that the school board approves the personnel recommendations?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Sturtevant, seconded by Ms. Bailey. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes, with exception.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. May I have a motion that the school board approves the superintendent's recommendation regarding student matter SM 2018-2019-01 to waive tuition for the student for the 2018-2019 school year?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Palmer, seconded by Mr. Sturtevant. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. May I have a motion that the new assistant superintendent and Mrs. Nan Alga be appointed as designees to sign official correspondence for the superintendent in the superintendent's absence?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, seconded by Mr. Honeycutt. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. And now with regards to the VSBA updates that we received last meeting. Do I have a motion that the school board approves the VSBA policy updates for BBFA, GI, JC-JED, JGD/JGE, JO, and K through L?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Bailey, seconded by Mr. Honeycutt. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Abstain.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. May I have a motion that the school board deems the La Crosse Elementary School musical instruments as surplus?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. May I have a motion that the school board approves the math textbook adoption recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Bailey, seconded by Mr. Sturtevant. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Now, may I have a motion that the school board approves the 2018-2019 VPSA reimbursement resolution?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt, seconded by Ms. Bailey. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. The 2018 VSPA Fall Bond Pool. May I have a motion that the school board approves the 2018 VPSA Fall Bond Pool resolution?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Sturtevant, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Now, may I have a motion that the school board approves the 2018-2019 school fee schedule?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Bailey, seconded by Mr. Palmer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Now, may I have a motion that the school board selects, guess this will be the Chair Brent Ritchie as the delegate for the VSBA and Wanda Bailey as the alternative? Is that what we're going to represent the Mecklenburg County Public Schools at the VSBA Delegate Assembly and Regional Meeting at the 2018 VSBA Annual Convention, November 14th through 16th in 2018?
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
are we in a position that it would be, as she will represent you anyway, that we identify someone else to be an alternate in her place? Because that's what happened last year. You were not able to get to the,
For whatever reason.
For whatever reason.
Something were to happen and you can't be.
you would
there.
automatically be representing him, and those meetings typically could take at the same time.
So we need
So I
a,
think it would be best, to, as she mentioned, identify an alternate other than Ms. Bailey
okay.
for this option.
Any
I'll make a
volunteers?
motion, recommend Mr. Palmer.
Second. You got it.
Have they
Your mouth got open.
contacted-
Tell
Hey,
her.
see how that works?
They want you to serve on that television?
Yes, Mr. Ritchie, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
I
Palmer.
think since Mr. Honeycutt has already in that capacity,
I've already been contacted by the VSBA about filling as a teller again this year, so I accepted that position
So then I
already.
can do the alternate?
Right.
Okay.
So we don't need to,
So I can be the alternate if they've already contacted him for the teller committee?
okay, so no need to make another recommendation for
No,
anyone else.
No.
Plus, I plan on being there, so hopefully
Okay.
we'll have to call
So
in
then I-
anybody.
Okay.
Mr. Ritchie, I withdraw my recommendation, Mr. Palmer.
That's okay with you,
And my
Mr. Palmer? All right, so we're back to the initial motion. The school board selects Brent Ritchie as the delegate and Wanda Bailey as the alternative to represent the Mecklenburg County Public Schools at the VSBA Delegate Assembly and Regional Meeting at the 2018 VSBA Annual Convention, November 14th through 16th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt, seconded by Ms. Bailey. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Abstain?
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. All right. Now we are,
And I also would
Go ahead.
like to, at this point, introduce, because he was not here at the last meeting to be introduced, our new Director of Secondary Education, Dr. Jeff Scales. If Dr. Scales would come up, I think he made it. And as you've just voted on it through the personnel agenda, Mr. Abe Jeffers as our new Assistant Superintendent. And I would add that we have many other personnel that we will be honoring and recognizing and meeting at the new teacher dinner that the McBeep is going to once again be sponsoring this year. And I would hope that all of our board members will be able to join us for that to meet them. But if you have any questions of either of our new central office staff, I would give you this time to ask them or comment.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're very glad to have
would
you
you like
with
to,
us.
would they introduce themselves, or at least
Yeah,
for the public to know where they, where you're from, where you, where,
Yes.
how did you get here?
I'm Dr. Jeff Scales. I'm originally from Cumberland County. I am still partially serving as the principal of Cumberland High School for a couple more days, but I'm also enjoying my vacation here as the Director of Secondary Education here. Again, I'm native of Cumberland, ex-military. I was enlisted for 2 years, and I was an officer for 6 years. And finished James Madison University for my undergraduate, Virginia State University for my master's, and Liberty University for my educational specialist and doctorate. So I'm glad to be here.
You say you were ex-Army?
Yes.
Okay.
So that puts Mr. Edwards one up
Just
on
don't
you
get
right
any
now.
better than that, does it? Just doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Jeffers, and I'm so happy to be joining Mr. Nichols and the Mecklenburg community as this great work that's underway. I am, you may notice a familiar accent. I'm from East Tennessee originally. I'm from a small town called Oneida, Tennessee. I've been just completed my 25th year, and I'm coming most immediately from Richmond City Public Schools. I've worked in Northern Virginia for 9 years, Baltimore County, Maryland for a year, Columbus, Ohio for 3 years, and Middle Tennessee for 4 years. So I've been around a little bit, and very excited about the work that's going on here with the profile graduate and preparing our students for success after. My undergraduate degree is from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, my master's from the University of Virginia, and I did my coursework, my doctorate and ABD from Ohio State University, in my dissertation. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, reminders. August 1st through the 3rd, new teacher orientation. August 6th, convocation, AM professional development in the PM. August 7th, professional development. August 8th through the 10th, teacher workdays. August 9th, open house fee day. August 13th, first day of school for students. And August 20th, regular school board meeting. And we are now to board member remarks. Who would like to begin?
I'll start.
Thank you.
No comment.
Mr. Johnson?
Enjoy the rest of your summer. The first day of school is coming very quick.
26. I'm not sure about that.
Thank you. Ms. Bailey?
Yes, I just wanted to give the board a little bit of update. Mr. Nichols and I attended the Go Virginia Summit on June the 21st in Hampton, Sydney. The Go Virginia organization, I learned so much that morning. It's all about economic development for our region, and Mecklenburg, Halifax, Charlotte.
It's Region 3, and it
Region.
goes all the way from Brunswick County to Patrick County and up to Buckingham and Cumberland. It's the largest economic development region in the state.
But they are working diligently to make our area, to market our area to industry that is looking to relocate, to make sure that we have industrial sites that are adequate, that they know who we are here. And we received advice from an elephant on how to succeed economically in our county from an economic development consultant. I just have to repeat these because they were so good. Make a big first impression. It's hard for an elephant not to do that. And number 2, be all ears. So listen to the people that you're representing. Number 3, know when to put your foot down. An elephant always knows when to do that. Number 4, have big ideas. Elephants, everything about an elephant is big. And number 5, and I really think we need to move, is charge ahead. Can I get an amen on that? We also heard from regional business partners, the owner of Eclipse Tools, Microsoft, and Blair Construction had representatives there. Their biggest need is for skilled trades. That would be individuals with sub-baccalaureate degrees with excellent soft skills. And I think we're getting that message. The most important piece of economic development, according to the specialist at this Go Virginia Summit, is the existence of an effective workforce pipeline, which consists of individuals 25 to 44 years old. And the most important piece of economic development is investment in your K-12 education system. And I was so glad to be there and to see other supervisors from other counties, other economic development folks from other counties there. We need to be on the cutting edge of being able to provide that that workforce pipeline. And I thank Mr. Nichols for being so involved with that. And certainly the next summit that we have, I would encourage all of us to be a part of that. Also, this week, July 19th, at La Crosse Elementary, if you have a student at La Crosse Elementary or if you teach there, there will be a food event there, a food giveaway event starting at 3:30 Thursday afternoon. So please come and take advantage. Last month, they had lots of food that they gave away. The turnout was not quite so good because it was the first one at La Crosse, but hopefully on Thursday there will be more people there, and of course Brent and I will be there to give away books to all the families that come. And the new teacher dinner, y'all put that on your calendar, August 8th at 5:30 at the Clarksville Community Center. Hope to see all of you there for that. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Edwards?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Mr. Palmer?
Sure. I've had the experience of working in several counties in the surrounding areas, and I realize the shortage of teachers, but I want to commend Mrs. Alga tonight. If you have had a chance, or if you haven't, all of us have a copy of all of the teachers that she have brought on, prospective teachers that she have brought on board. I know a lot of times the personnel director does not get recognized because they are either recommending for a person to be terminated or trying to go out and find someone, and we all think that that they're just out there hanging on trees, but they're not. So I commend her for her hard work and dedication. Ms. Agler?
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Mr. Campbell? Mr. Honeycutt?
I want to reiterate what Mrs. Bailey said, serving on the McBeat board as well. That's a really neat time to be able to meet all of our new staff that's coming on board for the new year. So I would reiterate that at August 8th at the Clarksville Center there. Registration starts between 5 and 5:30, and the dinner starts at 6 o'clock. A lot of great things are happening moving forward. Again, with the prospect of purchasing land, we really need to get that done. I encourage all of our citizens to reach out to their Board of Supervisors members because, again, those are the ones that hold the key to that piece of it. And as one of the Board of Supervisors members told me in a phone conversation last week, I thought we were going to be starting to move land around in July or August, or June or July or August. And I said, well, I thought the same thing, but that just isn't happening. But again, just hope everybody's getting some much-needed time off and some vacations, being able to instill to take some of those, and just looking forward to another great school year. It's been an honor for me to almost have served on this board for 3 years. We've had its challenges for sure, but looking forward to what the next 7 will bring. So again, I appreciate what you all are doing, and enjoying the rest of your summer, and we look forward to seeing you August the 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt. And I just wanted to plug the upcoming Feed More event. That's for families or for kids at the school and the employees maybe. But anyway, it's a great community event. It brings a lot of the teachers are there volunteering their time in the summer, and it's so I really encourage the parents and families of kids to come out to that, and they get they have a lot of great food there, free for the taking, and books for the children. So it's really a nice way for the community to come out, and the teachers are very supportive, and the staff at the school are very supportive of it. So it's nice to support them in what they're trying to do by coming out. So that I believe does it for our business tonight. So do I have a motion to adjourn our meeting? All in favor? Aye.